Can I ask you something personal? When was the last time you felt completely safe? Not just physically safe, but that deep in your bones kind of safe, where nothing in the world could touch you, where time slowed down, where someone who loved you was just in the next room humming to herself while something amazing was cooking on the stove. Do you remember that feeling? Because I do. And I think you do too, even if it's been 30, 40 years since you last felt it. For millions of Americans who grew up in the 1980s, that feeling had one address, one specific place on earth: Grandma's living room. Close your eyes for a second. Okay, don't actually close them. You're watching this, but picture it. You walk through that front door. Maybe it's after a long car ride. Maybe it's Christmas Eve. Maybe it's just a random Saturday in July. And the first thing that hits you is the smell. Not a candle from a store, not an air freshener. Something real, something layered. Coffee that's been warming on the burner since 6 a.m. A hint of mothballs from the hall closet. Lavender sachets tucked between pillows, and underneath all of it, something bacon. Always something bacon. Then your eyes adjust. The carpet. Oh, that carpet. Thick, patterned, maybe avocado green or harvest gold. Colors that had no business being beautiful, but somehow were. You could feel it through your socks. You'd sit on it for hours. The furniture was heavy, dark wood, upholstered in something scratchy and floral that you'd press your cheek against anyway because Grandma sat in that chair and it smelled like her. There was a doily on every flat surface. Why? Nobody questioned it. It was just the law. A cabinet full of things you weren't allowed to touch: porcelain figurines, crystal glasses, little glass animals that caught the light. But you looked at them. You wanted them. They felt like treasure. And then the console television, big as a piece of furniture because it was a piece of furniture. Rabbit ears wrapped in aluminum foil, 3 channels, maybe 4 if the weather cooperated. And somehow, that was enough. You know what the 1980s grandma living room sounded like? It sounded like a clock, a real one, on the wall or on the mantel that ticked, loud, steady, like a heartbeat for the whole house. It sounded like the Weather Channel playing softly in the background, that smooth jazz they used to play while the local forecast scrolled across the screen. Nobody was really watching it. It was just on, like a companion. It sounded like Lawrence Welk reruns on Saturday afternoons, or The Price is Right at 10 a.m., or Wheel of Fortune after dinner, when Grandma would call out the answers before you could even read the puzzle. She was always right. It sounded like the crinkle of her plastic-covered photo albums, thick pages, sticky backing, photos slightly yellowed at the edges, a whole life preserved. People you didn't recognize who somehow felt like family anyway. And the phone. That wall phone with the cord so long it could reach every room in the house. When it rang, everyone stopped. Calls were events in 1980s America. You didn't text, you didn't scroll. When Grandma got on that phone, you sat quietly and you waited. The rhythms of her house were slower, intentional. Meals happened at specific times. Naps were sacred. Sunday was different from every other day, quieter, dressed up, set apart. And somehow those rhythms felt like structure, like the world made sense inside those walls in a way it didn't always make sense outside of them. Let's talk about the food, because Grandma didn't just cook, she expressed love in calories. There was always something on the stove, a pot of something slow, a roast, a soup that had been simmering since morning. The kitchen counter had a cookie jar, not decorative, functional. It was never empty. You didn't ask if you could have a cookie, you just took one. And she'd say, "Take 2 from the other room," without even looking up.
Sweet tea in the South, lemonade in the Midwest, iced coffee with too much cream on the East Coast, but always something cold, always something sweet, always served in an actual glass, not a plastic cup, not a paper cup, a real glass, because you were a guest and you mattered. Her recipes weren't written down anywhere. They lived in her hands, a pinch of this, a handful of that. You'd watch and try to memorize it, and still, somehow, yours never tasted exactly like hers. And that was okay, because maybe some things aren't meant to be replicated. Maybe some things are meant to be remembered.
Here's the thing, though. Here's what I really want to say. It wasn't the carpet. It wasn't the doilies or the cookie jar or the console TV. It was the feeling of being unconditionally wanted. Grandma's living room was the one place in the world where you didn't have to be anything other than exactly who you were. You didn't have to perform. You didn't have to be smarter, funnier, more successful, more together. You could walk in on your worst day with grass stains on your knees or tears on your face, and she would look at you like you were the most important person who had ever walked through that door. Because to her, you were. In the 1980s, American life was accelerating. Yuppie culture, the rise of the two-income household, cable TV arriving, the world getting louder, faster, more complex. And Grandma's house was almost like resistance, a holdout, a place that said no. In here, we still move slowly. In here, we still sit together. In here, you still matter more than productivity. And for a kid growing up in that era, that was everything. Research tells us that children who had strong bonds with grandparents show greater resilience throughout their lives, more emotional security, a stronger sense of identity, a deeper connection to their own story. But you didn't need a study to tell you that, did you? You felt it in your body, in the way your shoulders dropped the second you walked through that door. So why does this still matter? Why are millions of people, grown adults with mortgages and kids of their own and gray in their hair, why are they still reaching for this feeling? Because the world we live in right now is loud and fast and disconnected. We have more ways to communicate than ever before and somehow feel more alone. We have more entertainment than any generation in history and somehow feel more empty. And somewhere in the back of our minds, in the part of us that remembers what it felt like to be safe, we are still looking for that room. We light candles that smell like something warm. We buy heavy blankets. We bake when we're anxious. We call it cozy and hygge and nesting. But what we're really doing is trying to rebuild something we lost. We are trying to build Grandma's living room in our own homes, for ourselves, for our children, for the people we love. And I think that's one of the most human things there is. So let me ask you again, the same way I started. When was the last time you felt completely safe? When was the last time someone was happy just because you walked in the room? When was the last time you sat somewhere with no agenda, no screen, no deadline, and just existed, and it was enough? Maybe it's been too long. Maybe the world needs more living rooms like hers. Maybe we need to become the persons whose home feels like that for somebody else. Because she didn't know she was building something sacred. She was just making cookies and turning on the TV and saving you a seat on the couch. And it was everything. If this brought back a memory, a face, a smell, a feeling, drop it in the comments. I'd really love to know whose living room you're thinking about right now. And if someone in your life made you feel the way Grandma's house felt, maybe today's the day to tell them. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.